Okay, so today I am going to be talking about reading with children in small groups. And in this presentation, we're going to discuss small groups in core literacy programs, small groups in reading workshops, and small groups in literature discussion groups. So according to Morrison and Wilcox, core literacy programs are comprehensive sets of materials for literacy instructions that already contain the reading that your students will be doing, and they contain teachers' manuals and practice materials and the assessments. So everything is provided for you, so the teacher doesn't have to go out and actually seek the materials. And they're also known as basals. And they're very beneficial because of the fact that they're very comprehensive and they cover all of the different aspects of literacy while also focusing on reading. And they contain level text, so your struggling readers aren't going to be forgotten, and the readers that excel will also be able to have material that's on their level. And most of the providers also have material specifically for EL students. And the National Reading Panel found that 5 components were very essential to reading instruction in these programs, and that is phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. And if you are initiating one of these programs, you want to make sure that they address all aspects that are included in that statement. And a study completed by Dorsey in 2015 showed that there is significant improvement in testing scores from the beginning to the end of the year in 3rd grade students when they used a basal program called Reading Wonders. They had about 10% go from well below average to below average, and then about 5% move from below average to at or above average, so it improved many students' reading abilities. And for the 3 steps of basals, when you're organizing, you want to make sure that when you're placing your students in the small groups, you take into account their reading abilities so that you're not placing students in a group that's reading a text that's not at their level, because they will not succeed if they are feeling frustrated with the text. And when you're working, you want to make sure that you prepare the students by telling them what you want them to focus on when they're reading. And during reading, all of the children in the group should read the passage, and most of the lower grades, like 3rd and below, are going to read aloud. And sometimes you might want to start them reading at different times so that they're not like copying off of each other and just learning what to say based on what their peers are saying. You want them to actually sound out the words on their own so that they actually are understanding the concepts behind it. And then after reading, you want to make sure that you are encouraging your students and telling them that they're doing a good job and letting them know what areas that they could improve on. And do a review of your different like vocabulary words and some of the major events in the stories. And while you are meeting with small groups to discuss those things, you can have the students go to different centers to work where they could do writing about the story that they did, or they could do post office and write each other notes about it, or just summarize what they have done. And you want to make sure that each group for the centers has a strong leader so that they stay on topic and are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Morrison and Wilcox describe reading workshops as a block of time set aside for reading instruction that usually begins with a whole class mini lesson of about 5 to 10 minutes that's led by the teacher, and it's followed by a work period where students just read for an extended amount of time individually, and they can select their own books in reading workshops. And then they respond to those books, and then they get in groups and discuss it and are able to share what they've read, and they can also have conferences with the teacher. Excuse me. So in the process of reading workshops, You want to start off with a 5 to 10 minutes mini lesson that starts off by saying what your topic that you're focusing is on. And then next, your students are going to be able to choose their books and read silently, and you can do your small groups while they're reading so that you can focus in on a group while the other students are still busy with an activity. And Wolfen conducted a study on reading workshops and found that in the classrooms that she studied, only 33% of workshop routines included student-teacher conferences, which is really sad because conferences allow you like a great opportunity to focus in on what the students are doing well at, and also to focus on what they need improvement on. And it's good time to have that direct instruction to focus in and give the students that need that extra attention the one-on-one time. So the conferences are a good thing, and we should try to implement them more than some teachers currently do. And then after children are finished reading, you're going to place them in small groups so that they can discuss what they've learned. And it's okay that they have read different books. They're just going to be able to hear the ideas and concepts that you've been teaching applied to a few different types of texts and different stories, and they'll be able to build off of what each other have read. So there's a lot of benefits to reading workshops. It really benefits EL students because of the fact that they're able to work with their peers, and they're also able to choose their own books. So for when they're choosing their own books, they could even choose a book in their native language, which would make it a lot easier for them to read it. And comprehension would come easier because they're not going to focus so much on decoding each word. They're going to be able to absorb the material a lot more easily. And then talking with their peers allows them to have meaning in their conversations and to just really be able to discuss their thoughts and solidify the material that they've been learning. And Stockdale is quoted as saying, they must build strong frameworks within their classrooms that provide English language learners with literacy-rich experiences, expose them to content on their grade level, and make content comprehensible to them. So EL students are very much capable of doing these reading workshops and stuff. You just might have to put a few like spins on it so that it applies to them in a way that is easier for them to use. And when students are allowed to pick the books that they read, they're generally going to be more engaged and interested in what they're actually reading. So Morrison and Wilcox describe literature discussion groups as small temporary groups of students who read the same story or book, and the text can be multiple kinds. It doesn't have to be like just fiction or just a narrative story. Like you can do informational text and others as well. And each member responds to the story on their own, and then they come together as a group to discuss their responses and different jobs that you have assigned them. And it's very important when organizing your literature circles to think about what students you're placing where, because you don't want students that aren't on the same reading level or close to the same reading level in the same group, because some might struggle with the book and some it might not be challenging enough for them. And then you want to take into account the interests and preferred choices of your students so that they are engaged in what they're reading. And you also want to make sure that you don't have students that will misbehave if placed together in the same group. And if there's a student who really benefits from having a certain peer help them, you might want to consider putting them in the same group so that they can help each other. So before your students start reading, you should help them build the background knowledge that they'll need to read through the text. And while they're reading, they're probably going to be reading silently, and the lower grade students will be reading in the classroom, but like a lot of middle schoolers and older students, if you're doing literature discussion groups, will read the text before they come to class and come in prepared with all of their reactions and everything already there. And then after reading, students will get into their assigned discussion groups so that they can talk about the book, and they'll discuss any role assignments that you gave them before they came into class, and their reactions to the text as well. And Moses, Ojdin, and Kelly said that discussion groups serve particularly valuable purposes by allowing students of all backgrounds and reading abilities to have rich discussions following regular opportunities to engage with books from a transactional perspective. Discussion groups allow teachers the opportunity to value all students' voices, which is very important. We don't want any students to feel like they're being ignored. And a quote by Frederick Douglass, once you learn to read, you will be forever free. And we want all our students to feel that freedom and want them to feel like they can do anything, and reading is a gateway to having that confidence. So we want to make sure that all of them are getting the instruction that they need. So in this presentation, we discuss small groups in core literacy programs, small groups in reading workshops, and small groups in literature discussion groups. And here are my references. And now we're going to do the groups. Is everyone signed in? I'm going to go ahead and start it. So our first question, which is not one of the 3 instructional reading approaches discussed today? Basils is a term that can be used to describe what instructional reading approach? That's right, it is core literacy programs. Which of the following should be considered when literature discussion groups are created?
You're not first.
It is all of the above.
I'm 1 point behind
I'm in
you.
12th place.
Which of the instructional reading approaches includes mini lessons? It is reading workshops. When students choose the books they read, they will have a higher level of interest. True or false? It is true. Which instructional strategy provides all of the materials for the teacher? It is core literacy programs. And finally, which of the 3 instructional approaches do you like the best?
I'll just choose one.
I think we have one more person who hasn't answered.